It was subtle when it started. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I dismissed it as highway hypnosis. Late-night drives have a way of blending moments together, creating a dreamlike haze between consciousness and exhaustion. I was returning home from a consulting job in the next county. A long drive, a route I'd driven plenty of times. The highway stretched before me, a black ribbon punctuated by occasional street lights. Around 11:47 p.m., I passed the old, abandoned gas station with the weathered Coca-Cola sign, illuminated by a street light close to it. Nothing unusual. One more hour, or at most an hour and a half from where I was, I'd be back home, relaxing. Sometime later, perhaps about 20 minutes, I drove past the station again, past the same broken neon sign, past the slightly tilted street light a couple of meters from it. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks. Perhaps I was more tired than I realized, stressed from the day's job. I checked my rearview mirror, expecting to see the familiar curve of the highway behind me. Instead, I saw nothing but darkness, not even the station or the street light a few feet from it that illuminated it. Perhaps it was a figment of my imagination, but I noticed that the night had become darker than it was an hour ago. The sides of the road, the grasses, the trees, and the power poles were barely visible, and even the car headlights only provided a few feet of visibility in front of me. Leaning forward and looking up, I saw no stars in the sky, which about an hour ago was clear and dotted with stars. This made me feel disturbed and worried. The weather wasn't cool, suggesting an impending rainfall, and at this time of the year, it wasn't expected to rain to the rainy season 2 or 3 months away. I brushed everything off, attributing the experience to exhaustion, and focused on returning home. But the uneasy feeling continued to gnaw at the back of my mind. Soon after, I passed the filling station again, a third time. "What the fuck?" were the words that left my mouth as I applied the brakes. Slowly, the car came to a screeching halt. Putting the gear in reverse, I drove back till I was in front of the old structure. With a puzzled expression and confusion, I stared at it for a while, to be certain it was the same location I was looking at. The old worn-out paint and posters on the grey walls and broken windows were visible in the light from the street lights beside it. The Coca-Cola sign and the damaged fuel pumps stared back at me. I checked the clock on my dashboard, which still read 11:47 p.m. Perhaps it was broken, so I reached for my phone in my pocket and pulled it out to check the time, and it was also 11:47 p.m. What the hell is happening tonight? I muttered. It felt like about half an hour had passed since the last time I checked the time on the clock, and half an hour left to complete my journey home. But the time was still the same, and I was seemingly driving in circles. I knew I was exhausted, but not to a disoriented degree, and the road continued straight into my estate, with no turns or exits, so there was no way to circle around and get back on any point on the road before the station. My chest became heavy with anxiety, which I tried to shake off, but I couldn't. Everything about the night felt wrong. The sudden thicker darkness, the absence of stars from the sky, which had been starry about an hour ago, and the loop I seemed to be in, all got me worried. With no explanation to think of, I continued my seemingly endless journey, driving much higher than the speed limit of the road, and desperately hoping not to return to the same location again. To distract myself a bit from my mind racing with thoughts, I turned on the radio to play some music, but nothing was on the air. No station could be tuned into. It was only static that came from the speakers, which continued even after connecting my phone that was set to automatic Bluetooth connection with the radio. None of the songs on the device played on the speakers, just static. For a moment, I thought of placing a call to someone, perhaps the authorities. But I brushed the thought aside when I remembered that around this area, network is non-existent, which made me realize I was alone, with no way of getting any help. I drove past the station again a couple more times, each time taking to pass it again getting shorter, till every few seconds I drove past it. I tried to ignore the situation and continued to drive, barely noticing that I was pressing the accelerator hard on the floor and speeding significantly past the speed limit, hoping to escape the loop I was trapped in. "Oh no, please God, no," I said in frustration, till I eventually stopped the vehicle. The station was right in front of me, and I bowed my head onto the steering wheel, trying to calm myself and think of the next action to take. After a few seconds, I raised my head and noticed a person standing beside the Coca-Cola sign near the station. Relief washed over me as I stepped out of the vehicle and advanced towards them. The closer I got to the individual, I scanned the person to make out their features. He or she was dressed in a black hooded robe, which was so dark that if not for my headlights that shone on their direction, they would have blended into the thick, dark night. The person was tall, over 6 feet, with a robust build. The fabric clung tightly to their body like someone who wore something they had outgrown and was stretched taut on them. In fact, there were no creases, and it was smooth and glossy. I was a few feet away when I said, "Hello, I need your help, please. Something weird is going on here." But the person gave no reply and stood motionless. The appearance creeped me out a bit, and I stopped my approach to scan the individual and assess the level of security of the situation. It was then that I noticed a strong smell coming from the individual. It smelled like burning rubber and animal flesh. It was so strong that I began to tear and quickly cover my nose. Taking a few steps back and watching the person to be sure they didn't follow me, I quickly ran back to my car and started the engine, while still focused on the individual who remained still beside the sign. Stamping on the accelerator, I zoomed off, only to again drive past the station with the individual beside the sign. Each time I returned to the same location, the individual seemed to be a few steps closer to the road. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I yelled, "Shit! What the fuck is this?" Then my speakers burst to life, which startled me so badly that I almost lost control and veered off the road. It was loud static like before, but there was a sound between the static, which gradually cleared up.
"Come play with me. Hello, come play with me. Come play with me,"
it said in a child's voice. It said this repeatedly, causing me to yell at the radio, "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!" The tears now running down my eyes. The individual, or the thing, was now on the road, in front of the sign, and directly in front of me. So I stopped the vehicle before I collided with it. It remained motionless even as I blew my horn at it. But then it did something that terrified me. It made a sound that was exactly like my horn I blew at it. "Fuck this," I said, then put the gear on reverse and drove back. The thing then bent and twisted as long appendages sprouted from under its robe. Several of them, jointed and bent like the legs of a spider, arranged in odd angles, lifted the thing off the road, and it charged towards me. "Jesus Christ!" I yelled while increasing my speed as I drove in reverse. The thing repeated the sound of my horn back at me, again and again, as it closed the distance between us. As it moved, the hood over its head blew back, revealing a paper-white, smooth and featureless head that split down the middle and opened into a vertical mouth with spiral rows of teeth. The sound it made got louder and deafening. The childish voice on my speakers continued to speak.
You have nowhere to go. Come play with me.
Stop, let us play.
The voice now sounded warped and deeper. I wanted to turn off the radio, but my attention was on the road, which I couldn't brake to maintain control of the reverse driving I was doing.
Stop, let's play. Stop, let's play.
The warped voice said, getting louder. Then, I had an idea. I wasn't sure of what would happen, but I hit the brakes hard, which brought the car to a sudden screeching halt. My chaser, which had no time to stop, collided with the vehicle. I heard it tumble over the roof of the car before it fell on the road behind me. As it scrambled to get up, I ran over it, my car jerking as it went over its body. Then putting the brakes back to forward drive, I ran over it again. It let out a loud, bone-chilling shrill when my car went over it a second time. Without stopping, I continued forward, momentarily looking at the rear view mirror to see if it got up and resumed its chase. The voice on the speakers now said,
Come on back. Come back. I want to play.
In its warped voice. I drove past the station again, but I didn't worry about it as I did earlier. Escaping the creature was all that mattered now. For a while as I drove, I realized I didn't pass the station again, and the darkness gradually faded to the level of lighting that the night had before the ordeal began. Eventually the sign welcoming me to my county came up, and I let out a huge sigh of relief. The voice on the speakers was gone, now replaced by static, and I turned off the radio. The rest of the drive remained uneventful till I arrived at my place. The time on the clock on my arrival read 3 a.m. I have thought about that night for some time and tried to figure out why running over that creature seemed to free me from the loop. The voice on the radio, everything about that night. I've told no one about it, but I no longer drive at night anymore, and I take less jobs now in the other state. I now stay in hotels whenever these jobs end late to avoid driving at night, and I also take a different route back to my state. It is rougher and longer, but I don't mind it, so far as I don't have to drive along that road with the station again.